I stood in a packed courtroom wearing the only suit I owned while a judge I'd never met pointed at the Navy Cross on my chest and said 5 words that made the entire gallery gasp. "Remove that medal. Right now." Beside her attorney, my sister-in-law folded her arms and smiled like she'd already won. The lawyer, expensive suit, perfect teeth, leaned back in his chair with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "Your Honor," I said quietly, "this medal was awarded for... I don't care what it was awarded for." The judge's face had turned red. "This is my courtroom. You will follow my orders or be held in contempt." My hand moved to the Navy Cross. The blue ribbon felt familiar beneath my fingers. I'd worn it exactly 4 times. My brother's funeral, 2 Veterans Day ceremonies, and today, the day his widow was suing me for everything I had left of him. What the judge didn't know, what my sister-in-law's smirking attorney had somehow missed, was that the entire proceeding was being recorded by a court reporter who happened to be a Marine Corps veteran, and that 3 rows behind me sat a retired Navy JAG officer who'd just pulled out his phone. Instead of removing the medal, I looked directly at the judge and answered in the calmest voice I could manage. "Your Honor, with respect, this medal represents..." But before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand how a 41-year-old Navy veteran ended up standing in civil court being ordered to remove the 2nd highest military decoration this country can award, and why the man in the black robe had just made the biggest mistake of his career. My name is Marcus Wade, though the men I served with called me Chief. If you'd met me 2 years ago, you probably would have noticed my limp before anything else. I walk with a slight favor to my left side, a gift from an IED outside Kandahar that killed 2 of my team members and sent me home with a Purple Heart I never wanted. For 22 years, I served in the United States Navy. The last 8 were with Naval Special Warfare. I won't tell you exactly what unit because some things stay classified even after you take off the uniform. What I can tell you is this: I saw things no one should see, did things I still dream about, and lost brothers whose names I whisper every morning before coffee. My younger brother Ethan was my hero long before I became his. That probably sounds backward. I was the one with the combat deployments and the medals. But Ethan had something I always envied: lightness. He could walk into a room and make everyone smile. He worked as a paramedic, saved lives without a weapon, and somehow stayed optimistic even when the world gave him every reason not to. When Ethan met Carla, I was deployed somewhere I still can't name. He sent me an email with a photo. She was pretty, blonde, big smile, standing close to him at some beach bonfire. The subject line read, "I think I found her." They married 6 months later. I got leave and stood as his best man. During my toast, I promised to always look out for them both. I never break promises. Ethan died 3 years ago. Cardiac arrest at 36 while responding to a call. One moment he was helping load a patient. The next he collapsed. They tried everything. It wasn't enough. I held Carla at the funeral while she sobbed into my dress blues. I helped her sort through paperwork. I made sure his life insurance came through. When she said she couldn't afford the mortgage, I quietly paid it for 8 months without telling her. That house had been Ethan's dream. Our parents had passed years earlier, so Ethan left behind 2 things: a modest savings account and a small cabin our grandfather built in the Adirondacks. The will was simple. Everything split evenly between Carla and me. I told her to keep the savings. She needed it more. We agreed I'd take the cabin since I'd always planned to retire there anyway. For 2 years, that arrangement stood. Then Carla met someone new. His name was Derek Holland, and within 3 months of dating Carla, he'd moved into Ethan's house, traded her sedan for a luxury SUV, and started asking questions about asset optimization. Derek worked in real estate development, the kind of guy who saw everything as either an investment, opportunity, or a wasted asset. When he found out about the cabin, he saw dollar signs. "That property's worth at least $780,000, he told Carla over dinner one night. I know because she called me right after, her voice strange and distant. "Marcus, Derek thinks we should sell Grandpa's cabin." I set down the wrench I'd been holding. I was rebuilding a motorcycle in my garage, therapy that didn't require a copay. "The cabin isn't for sale, Carla, but legally I still have a claim. The will said split evenly. You took the cabin. I took the savings. But the values weren't equal." My jaw tightened. "You told me to take the cabin. You said you'd never use it. That was before I understood what it was worth." In the background, I heard Derek's voice. Tell him we're being reasonable. We just want what's fair. Fair. That word was about to cost everyone more than money. 2 weeks later, a process server handed me legal documents. Carla was suing me for half the cabin's appraised value, $390,000, plus emotional distress, and financial damages due to unequal distribution of marital assets. Marital assets. She was claiming that because she'd been married to Ethan, everything he owned, including his half of an inheritance from before their marriage, belonged to her. I hired an attorney, not an expensive one. I couldn't afford expensive. His name was Tom Briggs, a guy who'd served in the Army Reserve and gave veterans a discount. He looked over the case and frowned. Marcus, this is weak. Inheritance isn't a marital asset in New York, and you both agreed to the division in writing. So we'll win? He hesitated. Depends on the judge. That sentence should have warned me. The Honorable Judge Gregory Carmichael had a reputation. I learned that too late. He'd been on the bench for 11 years, handled mostly civil cases, and had what local attorneys called an unpredictable temperament. That was polite code for. Sometimes makes rulings that don't match the law. What I didn't know, what nobody mentioned until later, was that Judge Carmichael's son had been rejected from the Naval Academy twice. Rumor was the judge blamed military elitism for his son's failures, but that was just courthouse gossip, or so I thought. The hearing started normally enough. Carla's attorney, a guy named Preston Shaw who wore cufflinks that probably cost more than my truck payment, laid out their argument. Your Honor, Mrs. Wade was married to the decedent for 5 years. During that time, all assets acquired, including inherited property, should be considered marital property subject to equitable distribution. Tom stood. Your Honor, New York law is clear. Inheritance received by one spouse, even during marriage, remains separate property unless commingled. My client and Mrs. Wade reached a mutual agreement in writing. This lawsuit has no merit. Judge Carmichael leaned back. His eyes drifted to me. Counselor, why is your client wearing military decorations to a civil proceeding? The question landed like a slap. Tom blinked. Your Honor, Mr. Wade is a decorated combat veteran. The Navy Cross is... I know what it is. The judge's voice had an edge now. I'm asking why he thinks it's appropriate to wear it here. This isn't a parade. I felt the room shift. Tom tried again. With respect, Your Honor, veterans often wear their decorations to formal proceedings as a sign of... It's a distraction. Judge Carmichael pointed directly at me. Remove it. The gallery went silent. I looked at Tom. He looked back, his face pale. Your Honor, I said carefully, standing, this medal represents... I don't care what it represents. His face flushed red. This is my courtroom. You will follow my orders or be held in contempt. Preston Shaw was smiling now. So was Carla. That smile told me everything. This wasn't about property. It was about humiliation. My hand moved to the Navy Cross. I'd earned it. Pulling 3 Marines out of a burning vehicle while under heavy fire in Helmand Province. One of them lost both legs. Another died in my arms 2 days later. The third sent me a Christmas card every year with a photo of his kids. I thought about Ethan, about the promise I made at his wedding. Then I looked at the judge and said, Your Honor, with respect, this medal was awarded by the President of the United States for actions in combat. I will not remove it. Judge Carmichael's gavel slammed down. Contempt. Bailiff, remove Mr. Wade from my courtroom. Tom shot to his feet. Your Honor, you can't... I can and I will. This case is continued for 30 days. Mr. Wade is fined $1,000 and banned from these proceedings until he learns respect. As the bailiff approached, I noticed something. 3 rows back, a man in his 60s with silver hair and a Marine Corps pin on his lapel was recording everything on his phone. Our eyes met. He nodded once. In the front row, the court reporter, a woman with an EGA tattoo barely visible on her wrist, was typing faster than I'd ever seen. I didn't resist. I walked out of that courtroom with my head high and my Navy Cross exactly where it belonged. What Judge Carmichael didn't know was that he'd just been recorded violating federal law. The man with the silver hair was waiting outside the courthouse. Master Chief Wade? I turned. Just Marcus now. He extended his hand. Colonel James Hartley, retired. Navy JAG Corps. We shook. That was the most inappropriate judicial conduct I've seen in 40 years of practicing law, he said quietly, and I recorded every second. Within 6 hours, the video was on the desk of every veterans advocacy group in New York State. Within 12, it had gone viral. Within 24, the Navy Cross Society had issued a formal complaint to the state Judicial Conduct Commission. Turns out there's a federal law 36 U.S. Code Paragraph 903 that protects the wearing of military decorations. A state judge can't order their removal any more than he can order someone to stop being a veteran. But that wasn't the only problem Judge Carmichael had. Colonel Hartley made some calls. Within a week, 3 other cases came to light, all involving veterans, all in Carmichael's courtroom, all with strange rulings that seemed personally motivated. One veteran had been denied custody of his kids after the judge questioned whether someone trained to kill should raise children. Another lost a disability discrimination case after Carmichael said PTSD was overdiagnosed and overused. A third was held in contempt for wearing his Purple Heart during a hearing. The pattern was undeniable. Meanwhile, my case had been reassigned. The new judge was the Honorable Patricia Vance, a no-nonsense woman who'd served as an Army Reserve lawyer before her appointment. The hearing lasted 11 minutes. Judge Vance looked at Carla's attorney. "Counselor, inheritance is separate property under New York law. Your client signed a written agreement. Do you have any legal argument, and I mean actual law, not emotion, for why this court should overturn that agreement?" Preston Shaw shuffled papers. "Your Honor, the emotional distress, not a legal basis for setting aside a contract. Anything else?" Silence. "Then this lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Wade, I'm sorry for what you endured in Judge Carmichael's courtroom. It was a disgrace." She banged the gavel. Carla's face went white. Preston started whispering urgently to her. As I walked out, Tom clapped me on the shoulder. That's how it should have gone the first time. But the story wasn't over. 3 months later, Judge Gregory Carmichael resigned. The Judicial Conduct Commission had found a pattern of bias, inappropriate courtroom behavior, and multiple violations of litigants' rights. He faced potential disbarment. But the deeper investigation revealed something worse. Preston Shaw, Carla's attorney, had a connection to Judge Carmichael. They belonged to the same country club. Shaw's firm had donated to Carmichael's last retention campaign, and in 4 previous cases, Shaw's clients had received unusually favorable rulings in Carmichael's courtroom. The state bar opened an investigation into both of them. Shaw was suspended for 6 months. Carmichael lost his law license entirely. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post on social media. I didn't give interviews even when reporters called, because this was never about revenge. Carla called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Her voice was small. "Marcus, can we talk?" We met at a diner halfway between our towns, the same place Ethan used to drag me for pancakes whenever I came home on leave. She looked older, tired. "Derek left," she said quietly. I waited. When the lawsuit fell apart and the legal bills came, he said I'd mismanaged the situation. He moved out last week. "I'm sorry." She laughed bitterly. "Are you? I tried to take your home. I humiliated you in court. You were manipulated. I still made the choice." Tears started. "Ethan would be so ashamed of me. I thought about that. About my brother. About the promise I'd made." "Ethan loved you," I said finally. "He wouldn't be ashamed. He'd be heartbroken that you were hurting enough to make bad decisions." She cried for a while. I let her. When she finally spoke again, she asked, "Can you ever forgive me?" I'd thought about this moment for months. "I've already forgiven you, Carla." She looked up surprised. "But that doesn't mean things go back to how they were." She nodded slowly. "I understand. I hope you build a good life. I really do. But I won't be part of it." We said goodbye in the parking lot. I watched her drive away in the same modest sedan she'd owned before. Derek. Some lessons cost everything to learn. The cabin still stands on the edge of a lake in the Adirondacks, exactly where Grandpa built it 60 years ago. I spent the last year fixing it up. New roof, rebuilt porch, fresh paint. Every weekend I drive up and work with my hands on something real. It's not a $780,000 investment property. It's the place where Ethan and I learned to fish, where we scattered our parents' ashes, where he proposed to Carla by the fire pit. It's memory made solid. Last month, I invited some of the guys I served with. We fished, told stories, and didn't talk about the things we still dream about. One of them brought his kids. Watching them learn to cast a line, I thought about legacy. Money measures what things cost. Character measures what they're worth. My nephew, Ethan's son from a previous relationship, now 17, came to visit. He's thinking about joining the Navy. "Uncle Marcus," he asked one night, Why'd you risk contempt of court just to keep wearing a medal? I looked at the Navy Cross, now in a display case on the mantel. That medal isn't about me, I said. It represents men who didn't come home. Every time someone tries to diminish, whether it's a judge or anyone else, they're diminishing those men. He nodded slowly. So you weren't defending yourself? No, I was defending them. Would you do it again? I smiled. Every single time. The question I get asked most often, usually by other veterans, is whether I regret how everything happened. The answer is no. Not because I enjoyed being humiliated. Not because I wanted Carla to lose Derek or Judge Carmichael to lose his career. But because when people show you who they really are, you have two choices: pretend you didn't see it or believe them. I chose to believe them. Judge Carmichael showed me he valued his pride over the law. Carla showed me grief had changed her into someone my brother wouldn't recognize. Derek showed me some people see relationships as transactions, and I showed myself something too, that the values I carried in uniform don't disappear just because I took it off. Respect, honor, courage, commitment. Those aren't just Navy Corps values. They're the things that define whether you become bitter or better when life tests you. 6 months after everything ended, I received a letter from Judge Vance, the woman who'd dismissed Carla's lawsuit. Inside was a simple note. Mr. Wade, I wanted you to know that the court, reporter from your original hearing, submitted her transcript to the Judicial Commission. Her account was instrumental in the investigation. She asked me to tell you, semper fi. Chief, some of us still remember what honor looks like. I wish you hadn't needed to experience what happened in that courtroom. But I'm grateful men like you remind the rest of us what integrity costs. With respect, Judge Patricia Vance. I keep that letter in the same case as my Navy Cross, not because I need validation, but because it reminds me that for every person who tries to diminish what matters, there are others who silently stand guard over it. The Marine who recorded everything, the court reporter who documented the truth, the colonel who made phone calls, Judge Vance, who restored faith in the system. Those people didn't know me. They didn't owe me anything. They simply recognized that some battles aren't about winning. They're about what you refuse to surrender. My sister-in-law sued me. A judge ordered me to remove my Navy Cross. And yes, he lost everything. But this story was never about revenge. It was about remembering that the medals we wear represent the people who can't, the homes we fight for, shelter the memories of those who built them. And the principles we defend matter most when defending them costs us something. Ethan used to say, do the right thing, even when it's the hard thing. I think he'd be proud I finally learned that lesson. If this story meant something to you, I'd ask one thing. Remember the veterans in your life, not just on holidays or when it's convenient. Remember them when they're standing alone in courtrooms, struggling with invisible wounds, or simply trying to protect what their brothers and sisters died for. Share your thoughts below, and if you know someone who needs to hear this, pass it along. Thank you for listening.